So, good morning, Nick. It's great to have you on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Morning, Lewis.
Yeah, good morning. So, let's start off. In 60 seconds, can you sum up your journey through learning development?
6 seconds is quite a challenge. So 26 years in learning development, started off, I suppose, in my career as what was classed as training, I suppose, back in those days, and it's massively changed over the years, very much into a true sort of learning approach, um, and more performance related, I suppose, these days. Worked across sectors from retail, insurance, travel, hospitality, GovCo type environments, a real mixed bag of sectors in learning development, talent and performance probably is my 60
Right,
seconds
okay.
of me.
And just as well, do you see a complete shift in the way L&D departments are looked at, how they're ran in different sectors?
They are similar, I suppose. I think the difference can be maybe the investment or scale, the investment of how much budget there is to spend, or the investment of in people of that sort of function, I suppose, can change. But it's massively similar across all those sectors, and I think a lot of people might say it's different, but I think I've worked across quite a few now, and
Mm.
at the bulk of it, it's pretty much similar. Some of their challenges, obstacles, or projects, activities they're going after may vary, but yeah, fundamentally it's the same, in my opinion.
Yeah, all right, okay, no, interesting. So, as you know, today's podcast is all about learning culture. So, what exactly is learning culture to you, Nick?
I mean, in a nutshell, learning culture is about, yeah, throughout the organization, wherever you work, as an individual, as part of a team, actually learning is the heart of everything that goes on every single day. There's an investment in time to learn. There's a support in people to grow and get better. There's support in how people develop their careers and their future, whether that's just helping be the best they can be in their current role, whether that's skills, behaviorally, technically, or just in general as a person, or more focused on progression into next role, future roles. I think it's just having that environment where learning is embraced and people are given time, support, and guidance to help them, and it's supported as a thing, not a additional thing on top of your day job.
Yeah, so would you very much say the learning culture is the whole environment of learning? So it sort of includes the day-to-day learnings that we learn in our job role. It involves the L&D department. So it's a combination of all factors, would you say?
Totally, and I think the true learning culture for me is not just a function department inside a organization that does learning, creates learning, and helps all that grow. It's actually every single person is embracing that. You've got leaders of people that are supporting their people and actually doing it themselves rather than pulling on a function to come and do stuff for them. Leadership levels, that's a full, yeah, there's buy-in, and there's not a hard sell all the time to try and help promote learning or the various things that learning can do to help a company. That's sort of true learning culture for me.
And how do we actually create a learning culture? So we're talking about obviously
Mm.
it's people embracing learning. How do we go about actually creating it as L&D professionals?
I mean, at the heart of it, I suppose there is about having a offer as such. And I was thinking this through earlier as a bit of prep in my own mind before the podcast, but there's a fundamental element of that every organization has to have the foundations of just great learning, whether that's sort of just getting people into role as a new starter into an organization, developing people in their current role, and then helping people to then grow into their future roles. There's something in that sort of just the foundations are just great L&D practice that in theory any company would just do and would invest in really. So I think there's that helps the culture. But I suppose that nowadays that's probably more just given, that should just be there. I think then what truly breaks that learning culture is there are other things going on that are helping people to learn on the job. So that just in time, in the flow. And again, that's a big shift. I think about my career where I started, it was training where you rocked up in a room. We used to work off acetates at that time, which you probably might not know of. The things you used to write on a projector and screen before laptops and PowerPoints, right? We used to do so much chalk and talk, and that still has a place today, but it was download, it was training, it was probably more teach. I mean, that was where it was, what, 20 something years ago, and probably for many years before that. So that there's that element of that's the shift where actually nowadays we learn in the moment. We're Googling stuff, we're YouTubing stuff, we're TikToking, we're using all the great stuff around us that gives us that instant learning. So I think we need less of I train you ready for when you might need it. It's more I need it now or I need to find that information. So it's more
Mhm.
how do you help navigate people to the information and the learning and the things they need when they need it the most? And is it important that they always remember all that? I'm not sure it is at times. I think we get a bit lost in downloading so much stuff and making sure you can recall it and play it back and remember it. Yes, there are things you need to remember how to recall, but if it's about finding information, I think there's something important in that. And again, that's a shift, I'd say, from a learning function point of view. We are becoming much more about how do we help to create resources and materials? How do we help signpost people towards content, learning, resources, things when they need it the most, and find the answer, the solution, the information they're requiring. So I think there's something in that shifts that sort of helps to drive learning culture, and that peer-to-peer piece as well. I'm really clear about this that as a learning function, you can't be the custodians of all the great information, all that knowledge, and actually a lot of that information knowledge is around the people who work in the organization you work in. They've got the answers, they've got the ideas, they know how to do things, they've got the experience of working the systems or doing the jobs they're there to do, and actually all that knowledge is there. And actually, how do you help share that? So I think the peer-to-peer learning from and with other people is crucial. How do you create that environment where people can do that? How do you help create an environment
Mm.
where people can learn in the moment, in the flow? And yes, there's that more formal element, that more classroom, that more download, that more chalk and talk. But that has to be probably, I think, less of what is being done. There's so much more within an org where there's so much knowledge and skills there that can be tapped into every single day.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. So, what are some of the ways that we can go about improving the learning culture when it comes to that peer-to-peer side, and also
Hmm.
enabling people to have the skills and actually go out there and learn, whether that's, like you said, using social media, using AI. There's a whole different ways we can gather information. So, and just on top of that, once you've answered that, if there's any examples in companies or organizations that you've worked in that they've sort of done so to achieve those results.
So I think the peer-to-peer piece, the big, well, there's two unlocks, I'd say. There's definitely investment in the people leader. And when I use the word people leader, I suppose I'm talking about people that manage people. And I suppose I use the word people leader rather than traditional manager, really, but it could be manager in some places. So how do you equip a people leader and a manager to be able to coach and develop their people? That's crucial. And that's not about that more formalized, structured coaching or mentoring. It's about making sure a leader's equipped to have great conversations with their people to support them in their development of their role or their future and their growth. So I think there's something around how you invest in your leadership to be skilled and have the knowledge and ability, and that's equipment in tools or resources and knowledge to help to create that. And I think ultimately that's a key part of a leadership role to do that. I think that's one piece. And the second one, then how do you create an environment where people are able to share that knowledge, impart that experience and that skill and that I suppose that all that knowledge they've had for so many years doing the role they're working in with other people. And that's, I think, how do you help them to be skilled in sharing? And that's probably more mentoring, I suppose. So how do you help equip them as to how to be great mentors? Because the key thing between that mentoring and coaching, I mean, coaching is purest end of coaching. That's about asking loads of great questions, helping somebody to help themselves, I suppose, along the way. And that has got a role and a place, and that definitely helps support people. But from a peer-to-peer perspective, a lot of that is about impartment of knowledge and experience. That's probably more mentorship. I've been here and done that, and this is my knowledge and experience of what happened to me and how I do what I do. So if you can equip people more in how to mentor, share knowledge and skills on a day-to-day basis, and people have got the ability and confidence to do that, I think is an unlock. So I think there's two. There's the mentoring piece, a skill in an organization that you've got a good group of mentors, and whether that's more formalized mentors that are mentoring in a more formalized capacity that are pulled on and known of, or whether you've got people that are less of that but more of they are skilled. I think there's something in that can really work well. And then that people leadership piece of just having great leaders that are helping grow their people. So the investment in leadership at all levels and managers that manage people at all levels, I think is definitely crucial.
Yeah, so have you proactively gone out and done that type of training yourself where it's actually on the coaching, not necessarily the leadership because that's its whole own piece, but when we're relating directly to learning culture, sort
Hmm.
of that coaching, that mentoring, giving people the skills to actually pass on their knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, my role that I'm just literally about to exit at the moment, we've spent the last sort of 5 years really driving that coaching, mentoring culture, helping people to have great and better conversations, really developing the skill set of how to be a great mentor. And I think we developed over 100 plus individuals over that
Oh, wow.
time that are people that are able to go out there and really mentor people. And as I said a bit earlier, some of those were more formalized. They were recognized as people where you could find them. They had profiles, they had bios, they were out there for people to find and come see to get support. And then quite a few were just people that wanted to be great at mentoring that would just get tapped into by people that knew around them, really. So, yeah, a real investment in the skills, the tools, the knowledge of how to be a great mentor, how to impart knowledge, because it can't just be go out there and just help people, because you can do that, but the finessing of how good that will be and the impact of that will be won't maybe be as impactful. So just helping to give some individuals some skills and tools and resources to approach it that then gives that alongside with all that knowledge, skills and experience, I think is really powerful. So yeah, a huge investment in that. And then continuous investment once we've got that group of people, and we continued to grow that pool, and you can never stop growing that pool of people because it's never going to impact on you in a bad way. It's always going to be helpful to help other people help others around them. That continued professional development, I suppose that CPD of just ongoing helping them to learn new tools and new techniques and give them different things they can add to their toolkit is crucial. So yeah, I've spent the last 5 years predominantly in that space with a really good group of mentors, and then on top of that we sort of did a smaller group that were more coaching based, but that the plan was that group be a much more smaller population of people because we wanted to really grow that peer-to-peer piece, which is that mentoring from each other basically.
Yeah, because I just think so much of learning actually comes from those day-to-day
Oh.
interactions. A lot of people do think that it is, like you mentioned, the training sessions, whether that's designed by an internal L&D or bringing in an external company. And the majority of learning does come from those conversations with people that have been there for a couple of years, even whether it's showing you how to use a CRM right through
Correct.
to a whole host of different different areas. So no, very interesting how the role, how you rolled that out sort of to 100 different mentors. And then how did you share with the organization about those mentors so that they could go out and contact them?
So we started off with a bit of a, I suppose, a campaign, I suppose, to start with around what coaching and mentoring is and why we would sort of look to approach that and why the mentoring element was a crucial part of the unlock to how we created more of a learning culture. I mean, what had happened before that was a real push on our learning strategy, our learning ethos, what learning at the organization was all about. So what our approach to learning was did come before that, which helped to, I suppose, unlock then the deeper dive then into a particular part of how that was going to help us. But engagement at very senior levels, so with our exec teams, our senior leaders, spending time across functions, doing sort of town halls, meetings, discussions all around sort of the culture we're looking to create from learning, but really what the mentoring element was going to be, and really helping to educate people around that. And it was a here's what we're doing, come and be part of it really. So it was helping people to come towards us rather than we're not just going to sheep dip people and go, right, we're going to train people and you're going to be trained to be a mentor. It was here's the opportunity, here's what it's all about, here's how it can help you, here's how it can help other people around you, come chat to us. And it actually got some really great traction, lots of great interest. And once you got a good few people coming forward, we did some bios, some blogs, we did some sort of lovely stories talking about individual relationships with mentors and mentees and how that helped and what the impact was. We shared those across the organization. So naturally, that got some traction and interest that then just got more and more people. Um, and I can say sitting here now where we've got to is actually there's just a nice constant flow of people saying, I'm loving being mentored. Can I be a mentor myself? I want a mentor. We had it on an intranet site, so you could find people that were official mentors. The other big unlock, I would say, is we integrated it all into our learning management system, so our sort of HR platform. And what was great about our HR platform, which is Workday, we had a functionality to introduce mentoring inside of that. So you could set up your own profile. Everyone had their own talent profiles. When you then loaded people in that were mentors, if you were looking for a mentee and a mentor, you could find people that are mentors on the system as well. So we really integrated the system element in with the actual ethos element of mentoring and that peer-to-peer support. So it was in the one place to go and go and find it. And if you were looking for development, it would suggest learning to you, but also it might suggest a mentor that had certain skills, because you'd load your skills into the system, and if the skills match with the individual that was the mentor, it would say this person might be a good person to connect with. So it was that using the tech and the system side along with the more softer skill element was a real win-win for us.
Right. Okay. No, love that. That's really interesting how you incorporated it within the CRM, and it's almost like using AI in the sense of to find you that correct mentor. In the sense you
Correct.
put in what you need, and then it goes out there and sources from the pool of mentors. So no, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So when it comes, who needs to be involved in building a learning culture, and how do we get their buy-in?
I mean, it starts obviously with the learning function having a clear view, and I use the word strategy. I know that word gets used quite a lot, but what is that ethos that you're looking to create? What is the hook you want to hang all learning onto? Because I think without that, it can be quite easy just to go off and just do loads of stuff, and all that is great and all well and good and helps provide a great function, but you end up just being very busy just doing lots of great stuff. And again, I think the shift is we're no longer a function that just does that really. We need to be adding value, making impact, working on activity that's driving performance in a organization, tackling some of the challenging things that are going on, helping to unlock that, helping to really focus on what the big strategy is for the org you work in, and actually where are some of the unlocks that a learning function can help support. And I suppose then what is a massive change, I think, in that respect is that shift from learning to more performance, I think. And whether I think interestingly, in I don't know 10, 15 years time, I think you'll hear more performance function than you will hear learning function, because I think there's that, how can we help unlock individuals and teams, and how can you break down the barriers and the challenges in the company by really unlocking the performance of individuals and teams and the organization you work in. So I think there's something around how you are really clear on the ethos you're looking to create. You can articulate, you can describe that, and then once you've then got that, it's all about education. I spent a lot of time with me and my team doing that, and then from that we just spent a lot of time working with our exec team, our senior leaders, and the leadership population to really help educate as to what that is and when we're trying to do that, and what I suppose their role was inside of that. And I think that helped us to create more of that learning culture, because you've got everyone's buy-in and engagement, and also there's that understanding that it's not just a learning function or role to do learning, right? Every single person who works anywhere has a role to play, and helping that mindset shift between that traditional chalk and talk in a classroom to there are other ways you can learn. You can learn from and with others. You can learn in the flow in your job. You can learn, as you said, Lewis, just from having a quick conversation with somebody. That is learning. Learning happens in so many shapes and forms these days, and we learn much more faster than we ever have done before. That was a massive unlock for us. Just that engagement and that real sharing that knowledge with other people.
Yeah, I love the way that your current company approaches it. It sounds like almost that your L&D department does have a seat at the table and is involved in the wider business strategy. Would I be correct in thinking that?
I'd say, yeah, I think so. I mean, again, that's not easy. I think in some places I've had over my career, that's not always been the same scenario. I do think and I use the word people because we're much more described as a people function rather than HR, but those two things play out. I think that HR people function has much more of a seat at the table. I think there's more senior leaders and people directors and people officers now that are sitting at that exec table and are sitting at more of a senior level. I think that's a massive unlock because that voice is now there. And I suppose that there are times, even in my current scenario that I described to you, where that wasn't the case, but I would be pragmatic to try and find the opportunities I would get in there, and where there was an opportunity to have a conversation, you'd look for the unlock and the challenges where there were some obstacles that were happening. How could I or the team or us as a function get in there and help support with that? Because when you get in there and do those things, you're then adding value, you're making impact, and they can see that you can really help support. And it's not just I don't know, it's described as a soft and fluffy function that just does some nice stuff, right? I mean, that's all well and good, but if you can go in there and really help solve a problem or help relieve some tension or challenge, or get in there where there's a real nutty thing that's going on that you can help with, and you can provide some great solutions or things to help support people, the door opens a bit more, and then they then see the add value, they see the impact, they can see the difference you make. The door just tends to open a bit wider, and before you know it, it's widely open, and you're no longer fighting for a seat at that table. You don't need to fight for the buy-in because the buy-in just happens really.
Yeah, no, I love that. So it's very much about if you are in an organization that L&D is sort of that external arm sort of and isn't incorporated, us as L&D professionals, we could tackle issues and actually try and open that door. So what are some of the other ways that we could get involved and sort of, as you were sort of saying, show by almost getting those results and build that credibility from the ground up?
So I think there's an element of how you partner. I think across a organization, that business partner approach is quite a key mindset. So I think as a learning professional, again at all levels, and I appreciate there are some roles in a learning function are maybe not as front facing and not out there as other roles, but the more you can get yourself out there as a function to partner, work alongside where you've got your HR business partners inside a company or the HR teams that are partnering with the teams and the leaders in the teams and getting out there and getting close to those people, really building the connections, the relationships and building that rapport. And then finding out, okay, what are their plans for the next 12 months? What is their key elements of their strategy they're going after? What are the key things they need to execute and deliver that are going to help deliver against what they've agreed their objectives might well be for the year? And then where does that learning opportunity play to help support them? I think getting into those levels of conversations and providing that level of support to them is the crucial bit. And I'd say over my years of working in these roles, you never get someone say to you, no, don't come near us when you approach it in that respect, because you're trying to help solve their problems or go after their obstacles or help support them achieve their goals, their objectives. They're never going to say, no, don't come knocking. They will say no to you if you're bringing loads of stuff to them that has no meaning and no worth and no value. And they'll go, Nick, that's all great stuff, but yeah, that's not really going to help us right now. This is what we're trying to solve. So it's we are here to help solve their challenges, their problems, help them go after their opportunities. And that's where the learning function becomes much more about performance and you're helping them to deliver and achieve. And in turn, you're doing the same thing, but you're not doing it from that. Here's all your traditional learning stuff that is not going to add the value you might want it to add.
I love that. Some really great insights of how we can sort of have those conversations with HR. And it's not even about us, it's about how we can help them achieve their goals and their strategies. And I think coming at it with that approach is the secret to everything in a sense.
Yeah, and I think it's about it can get quite lost in your, I don't know, a cost center. You hold the budget, but actually if I think about younger learning professionals coming into the industry, it's about how do you help to drive performance in the org that you're working in. It's not just about running the typical workshops and that chalk and talk. That's not the role you play. It's how you can unlock and support them and improve things is a key massive thing part of it as well. It's the enabler. And as I mentioned already, I think the future is more performance related than it is true learning related.
Yeah, so Nick, before this podcast, we did speak on the phone, and I'd love to get your opinion. So, how can we measure whether learning culture exists and is it effective or not?
Oh, this is a really interesting one. And it's a bit like the holy grail, I think, of a lot of learning professionals. And I know when I first sort of started my training career, I know ROI and learning impact was a big thing and proving that and in how do you evaluate learning. And it's never really gone away. And I think personally, and it's my own opinion and I have my own perspective on it, I'm sure others will agree or disagree, but I do think at times we get lost in the measurement element of it and we are trying to measure so many things to prove that impact and that value. Now, I'm not going to suggest that hasn't got a value because I think it definitely has, but I do think the way to show add value, ROI, impact, and ultimately, as I mentioned about performance, is to work out what are some of the key metrics or measures that are being used in the business, because actually you can grab hold of those and work out, okay, if I know that's a metric, how can I use that to help show that whatever we've done over here has helped to move that dial and move that forward? Because that's a measurement, right? That's ROI. If you can show that you've helped go from here to here and you can demonstrate and talk to the role you've played and what you were using to articulate and describe how you've helped. I mean, that's pure measurement and that's adding value and ROI in a different way than just a learning ROI, in my opinion. Yes, you can have your traditional ways of measurement, which could be typically, I suppose, a staff engagement score. And again, lots of companies use different platforms and tools for that. That's always a good measurement. And I would say it's helpful as a guide. It helps give you great insight, and if you've got a tool that gives you narrative and information, great. You can get some great stuff from that, but it's not getting hung up on that purely as a measurement. I suppose it's more of a HR metric. It gives you a bit of a flavour of how people feel, right? And if you've got that, that's great. But I think really working out the activity that you are focused on, either as a learning function or looking at what the org's going after, and then finding some real good metrics there and working out, right, we're starting at this point. How can I work out where we are against a metric at this point? What's that measurement, right, where we are, whether that's a number or whether that's some detail or some information. And then you sort of track that as you go through at set points. And then as you get through towards, I suppose, more the back end of something, you can start to maybe describe that we were there and we are here now, and these are the things that we've done, and this is how it's helped, and that metric has then moved forward. And if those numbers have moved forwards, or they've achieved against the outcomes of a project, or they've achieved against their overall objectives from their strategy, or the key things they were looking to achieve, and you've been part of that, I think that's where the true ROI is. That's where the investment, the return on investment comes, because they've seen the add value of the function and the people and that true learning support to them.
When we spoke about your current role previously about the mentoring, did you do any metrics on that? Because I'm assuming from how I would understand it and hearing how you approached it and the results, that there'll be a lot of HR functions, HR metrics, should I say, that would have ticked a lot of those boxes, almost like retention, job satisfaction, a number of different. So did you ever measure anything like that?
We always had an idea and a close look towards the HR metrics. So yeah, retention, all those great things were always sort of looked at and observed, I suppose. Did we grab hold of the metric and go, right, that's where it is now, and we're going to see that difference? No. But what we did do is look at actually looking at how we could get a insight from employees around how that was feeling for them. So in that scenario, we had a great measurement. We had two actually. We had one that focused around people leaders and how leaders were helping to develop their people, and we made sure there was a question that was put into our engagement tool survey that asked that question around the support and development that they were getting from their leader. And then we also then targeted a particular question around how they felt they were being mentored and developed as an individual. And that was one of the key metrics that I used to use from a learning function point of view. Just keep an eye on it to see. It was never a target to get to a set point, but what I would say is that number moved forward and forward and forward, and yeah, went forwards rather than went backwards. So for me, that was a definite, we can see there's a shift. There's a commentary that describes that's improving and getting better, but also the metric is telling us that they are feeling more supported, more mentored. They've got more people to get support and help from as well, and the numbers were indicating that. So that was one great one. And then I think just that element of the numbers of how many people walk towards us. I mean, that in itself was a true metric. And we didn't set out that as a metric, but the fact we went from 0 to 80, then 90, then 100, and then you keep getting more and more people knock on the door. I mean, that in itself is a show of people are finding that useful. And the other thing from the system point of view, as I mentioned a bit earlier, where we built, there was a functionality inside of Workday, the HR platform we were using, where you could search for a mentor, you could add your skills you were looking for, that would super AI match you with a mentor that's got that skill set. Just the number of connections there kept increasing all the time, the amount of, because you could monitor and measure that from a reporting point of view, how many people were actually engaging and connecting with each other. That number went up as well.
So, Nick, some absolutely wonderful insights. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for your time, Lewis.
And thanks everyone for listening.